One of the things that we say to our clients is that sustainability is not cinnamon. You don't just sprinkle it on top. It has to be baked in from the start.
Hello and welcome to The Switch. I'm Elena Casas, and today we're talking about building a more sustainable future. The built environment is responsible for almost 50% of global carbon emissions, roughly half of that from the energy used by existing buildings and half from new construction and materials. Global building floor area is expected to double by 2060. That's the equivalent of adding an entire New York City to the world every month for the next 40 years. Architects are now trying to design buildings that produce net zero emissions, like Google's new California campus or this community college outside San Francisco, built by Canon Design. It has its own solar farm. Well, I'm joined now by Eric Corey-Freed, Head of Sustainability at Canon Design. Eric, hi, thank you for joining us. So how can we make our buildings less energy hungry?
Well, the act of operating a building produces a lot of carbon, right? All the electricity and natural gas that we use to heat and cool them. But then the act of building the building produces carbon as well. So we look at both, the operational carbon that it takes to run it and the embodied upfront carbon that it takes to build it. And we're looking to bring those down to zero.
2/3 of the buildings we'll have in 2060 have already been built. Soaring fuel prices this year have led European governments to dial down the heating in public buildings, force businesses to turn lights off at night, and even switch off the Eiffel Tower. But older buildings can be retrofitted to make them more efficient.
I'll give you a great example. So we're working on a hospital system in the Midwest portion of the US, and they had never done a green building before. And I said, what is one of the things that drives you crazy about your job? What's something that just bugs you? And he replied that we're spending $95,000 a year plowing snow. So our idea was, instead of, sinking more money into this old steam plant, what if instead we stick geothermal tubes into the ground? We'll pull up warm water. We'll use that warm water to create snow melt zones on the 15 acres of site. He'll never need to plow snow again, and then we'll use that very cheap energy to heat and cool the building.
The cement industry alone accounts for about 7% of global carbon emissions. In many parts of the world, sustainable architecture means rediscovering materials that are centuries old, like these mud houses in Senegal that stay naturally cool in the heat, or this skyscraper in Sweden, which at 20 stories high is one of the world's tallest buildings made entirely from wood.
I'm a big fan of mass timber, cross-laminated timbers. It's the only scalable zero-carbon material that we have for building buildings. It aligns with the building code, not great, but it aligns with the building codes. It's also renewable and sustainable, and as we harvest wood, we can plant more. So I think in the long term, it can be a great solution.
The cost of building materials spiked during the pandemic, and as mortgage rates soar around the world, demand for new homes is tumbling, meaning builders may put saving cash ahead of the planet.
If I'm changing the orientation of the building to maximize daylight and really leverage heat gain in the winter and keep it cool in the summer, I can shrink the size of the mechanical system. So I've saved you money. If instead of building out of little sticks of wood in evenly spaces, I can change that structural system and strip out that material, I'm saving you money. And if I'm being smarter about how the building's arranged and the material efficiencies, I'm saving you money. So does a green building cost more? No, if you do your job correctly, it makes you money. One of the things that we say to our clients is that sustainability is not cinnamon. You don't just sprinkle it on top. It has to be baked in from the start. And I think that's probably a better approach for everybody to consider.
In the United States, flooding and wildfires have destroyed thousands of homes this year, meaning vulnerable communities will need to build back differently.
We're designing a new school sustainability at Caltech in Pasadena. Pasadena, on the forefront, seems like it's really far from the ocean, right? So flooding's not an issue, but wildfires are, and earthquakes certainly are. So we're designing the building to withstand both of those things. We have to meet the challenge. We don't really have a choice. But wasn't it Winston Churchill that said, I always count on Americans to do the right thing, but only after they've exhausted every other possible option. And I think that's kind of where we are now.